Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we are talking about what I believe are going to be the 10 most expensive cards of Twilight of the Republic. So, as we are heading towards set 3, obviously we're going to have the pre-release and the market is still going to be extremely unstable early on in the set, so we're not really going to know exactly what are going to be the value of each of the cards. So in this context, it can be very easy to under-evaluate or over-evaluate certain cards. So this video is meant for you to give you like kind of a basic idea of what card to look for, what card that maybe you should keep, and also be careful whenever you are training those cards early on in the set, especially during the pre-release. So hopefully this video is going to be helpful for you. I'm aware that my set 2 predictions were not particularly good in terms of pricing, but I've learned my lessons since then. There's a couple of things that I've learned. Notably, I think that I've over-evaluated the price of certain rares. I think that it really needs a rare to be extremely pushed to reach the same price as a legendary. And I don't think there's any rare in the set that is quite pushed to the point where it would be more expensive than a legendary. I could be wrong about this, obviously, but this is why I decided to not put any rares in this list. Another thing as well is the fact that I've under-evaluated how popular certain characters are and how it can influence the price. So we'll try to take this more into account as we are talking about those cards. So without further ado, let's get into the number 10 of that list, and we're going to start with Satine Kryze. So this might be a surprising pick for some of you guys because I don't think this card is going to see a lot of competitive play, at least in set 3, because I don't think there's enough support to make this card work. With that being said, I don't pretend there's tons of people are going to try to make this card work, whether it is in competitive or in casual, because there's just simply a lot of people like that kind of play style of kind of milling out your opponent. She's obviously a legendary, and also another factor that may influence her price is that I think she has strong potential for the future as more cards gets printed that fits particularly well in her archetype. She might be the centerpiece of a very powerful deck later on down the line, if not in set 3, in future sets. And all those reasons combined makes me believe that she's going to be relatively pricey. I don't think she's going to be super expensive, but I think she's going to hit in the top 10 of the most expensive card. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, I don't expect her to be particularly expensive, but once again, probably somewhere in the top 10. Next, we got Unlimited Power. This is, in my opinion, a card that a lot of people have been looking forward to see. It is one of the most iconic moments in all Star Wars. We are playing a game called Star Wars Unlimited, so obviously this card was meant to be printed at some point. Even though it might not find a home in set 3 right away, because it's really kind of encouraging a sort of mid-range controlled double red deck, and double red have mostly been about aggro at this point. I think it's a card that has strong potential for the future, just like Satine Kryze. Just like Satine Kryze, I think it's a card that has a lot of potential for the future, for those kind of decks. It is not exactly a sweeper, but it is relatively close to it, and it costs 6, which is fairly reasonable. I think this card is, in the right deck, can be quite powerful. Also, we obviously know with Mace Windu, has some good combos with Mace Windu as well. So I don't think it's going to be a card that's going to be super expensive, but it is an iconic card. And it is also a card that has potential to be played in set 3 and potentially even more in the future. And for that reason, I think this card is good. It might have some value. It is obviously also a legendary. Moving on, we got Ki-Adi-Mundi. Strong stats here, 5/7 for 5. In a color that did not have access to those super high stats units for 5. So obviously, if this card was, let's say, in red, it would not be as good because it would be competing with stuff like Podamron or even the new the new Anakin Skywalker. So, but the fact that it is available in blue means that we are talking about a unit that has a lot of stats and has no competition in that particular price range. So I think that by itself is valuable. It also has a lot of good traits. So I think it's a card that is fairly playable. It's also a character which I think a lot of people like, that has been kind of an important figure of the Clone Wars. Even though the coordinate is probably not very good, but as I said, just as a 5/7 for 5, that can be for villainy and heroism, that you can play from for free with your My Only Hope using Yoda, that kind of thing. I think all those things combined means that it might see some competitive and some casual play, and it is also a legendary. So I think it is a card that we are likely to, that I think is deserving of the hate spots on this list. Very similar situation here for Gore. Not a card that is guaranteed to see competitive play, but it is definitely a card which I think has a certain casual appeal, lots of keywords, lots of interesting, fun things going on with this card. And I think the fun factor makes it that a lot of people, casual players, are going to be wanting to play that card. This card also has potential to see play in competitive, whether it is in exploit decks or even in aggro deck that plays a lot of like cheap units that has a kind of a finisher. Like this card can also be quite good. So I think there's a lot of things, cool thing going on with this card, and I'll be interested to see if it ends up seeing play. One thing that may hurt the value of the card a little bit though is like it is going to be one of the prize for store showdowns. But I still think it's going to be relatively valuable because it is competitively playable and it has a casual appeal, and it is obviously a legendary. Next, we have the Invasion of Christophsis, a card that I think is going to see some competitive play. Maybe it might be a bit more niche because it's really for specific decks, and it might even be a sideboard card. Hard to say exactly how much play this is going to see, but it's definitely going to see some competitive play. And it's also a card that I think has one of the strongest payoff in blue for exploit. I think is going to mean this card is going to see play, and it's also a legendary. So in my opinion, this card is well deserving of a number 6 spot. We got Darth Maul in our number 5, which I think is also going to be quite valuable, but for completely different reasons than the Invasion of Christophsis. I think Darth Maul has a strong, it's not going to see a lot of play in competitive, even though it is playable potentially in an ECL kind of green, black, red shell where you can ECL Darth Maul and do some pretty crazy stuff. But outside of this particular use, I don't think Darth Maul is going to see a lot of competitive play. However, it is a fan favorite. Darth Maul is one of the most beloved characters in the franchise, and specifically this version of Darth Maul, the one with the dual lightsaber from the Phantom Menace, I think has even more even more appeal in terms of like how iconic of a character that is. The fact that this card is also available from the convention exclusive box set with a special black art, I don't think that's going to have any impact on Darth Maul's price because very few people have access to those cards. So I don't think it's going to have any impact. But yeah, so for all those reasons, just mass appeal of the character himself, and definitely a playable card in competitive, at least in casual, and that also has a very fun card to play with. The ability just to kill 2 units at once, I think is just very fun and cool. And for that reason, I think for the rules of cool, I think that Vader is going to be the number 5 most valuable card in the set. Number 4, we got Ahsoka Tano. Also another beloved character in the franchise, an important figure of the Clone War, and a character that has also competitive playability. We're talking about decent stat, a very powerful ability. A very powerful ability and a lot of very good traits with Republic, Force, and Jedi. With that being said, I think that even though she's going to see some competitive play, I don't think she's going to be Personally, I think in most decks we'll prefer to play Ezra, especially if you're playing sort of a mid-range deck. You're probably going to prefer to play Ezra. So that's going to hurt how much she's going to see play because of the competition with Ezra. With all that being said, I still think she's going to see play, and she's also a beloved character. She's obviously part of she's going to be part of the Clone War. A lot of people are going to be wanting to have her. So for that reason, I put her at number 4. So we have competitive playability with mass appeal of the character. Those two things combined probably is going to make her quite valuable as a legendary as well. Then we got number 3. There are now 2 of them. Now there are 2 of them, sorry. And this card is, it's a bit hard to know how much impact it's going to have on the competitive environment, because it does require a very specific build to properly work. But when the card works, oh boy, is it strong. And it is a very strong card. I think it's going to see significant amount of competitive play, at least early on. And this card is only going to get stronger as we get more cards. So think about it. So whenever we're evaluating the price of the card, you don't only want to think about how much it's going to see play in the short run. We also want to know how much people are going to be trying to get this card, not because it's good now, but because it might be better in the future. And of course, as we see more cards that can be cheated with it in play, notably non-vehicle card that costs around 5, and with a combination of the amount of a unit with different traits that share the same traits, I think the numbers of how easy it's going to be setting up that combo is going to become easier and easier as time goes by, as we get wider different choices of different cards. So I think this card is going to see play in set 2 for sure. It might see and it might see a lot more play in the future, and for that reason alone, I think it's going to be a valuable card, and it's obviously a legendary as well. My number 2 is obviously Cad Bane. So generally speaking, units have the tendency to be more valuable than events, because people just prefer to collect units, it feels like, and also because the favorite characters features on the card is more likely to be kind of like super appealing to them. Cad Bane is a beloved character. A lot of people love Cad Bane, so again, getting a Cad Bane unit obviously is great. It's also a card that is very, which I think is a strong card, which is very likely to see competitive play. I don't think this card is going to be an auto-include in any of the cunning villainy card. For having played with the card, I found the card to be good, but not as good maybe as it looks on paper. Notably, it is obviously quite expensive. The fact that your opponent can just get rid of it and completely undo all the impact that it has is just a very big gamble whenever you're playing that card. But it has a lot of very highly stats, and the fact that you have to risk your unit whenever you attack with them is also kind of a big downside. So it is a card that I've had trouble to evaluate, and I'm still not 100% sure how much it's going to see play, but for sure it's going to see play. It is potentially playable in one of the strongest decks in the game, which is obviously Boba Yellow, and for all those reasons combined, and also being an iconic character, for sure it is going to be an expensive card, so I put this in the number 2. And in the number 1 spot, I decided to put General Grievous, the unit. In my opinion, it is the most widely playable legendary in the set. It's simply going to see play in a lot of different decks, so just because a 4/4 for 3 is a very unique stat line that we haven't had before. And I think it's a very strong stat line. It's possibly better than 3/5. It's better than 3/5. It's going to depend on the meta, but I think it is possibly better than 3/5 in the meta. It has the Separatist trait, which is very important trait in the Doku deck. Allows you to play this card as early as turn 1. You can also it's also as the official trait, which means that the card is also quite good in a Palpatine deck to turn on your Royal Guard. There's just a lot of things going on with this card. It obviously can be picked up by a Vader, since it's a 3-drop villainy. So there's just like a lot of very positive things. It gives a unit with a lot of stats which blue-black did not really have access to. I mean, they had access to Toro, but yeah, I think it's a card that has a lot of things going on for competitive. On the casual side of things, I think General Grievous is also going to be quite valuable, because it has this cool kind of thematic where you can kind of combine old lightsabers on them, and you can kind of do some crazy stuff with it. I think this is going to, for sure, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to try to build a lightsaber Grievous deck just for fun. And I think it's, so this ability has no chance to be any good in competitive, but I think in casual it can be quite good. So the fact that the card has at the same time some casual appeal and some competitive appeal simultaneously, those two things simultaneously combined, and also the fact that it's a very iconic character of the Clone War, those three factors combined mean that I think it's going to be easily the most valuable card of the set. And obviously it is a legendary, needless to say. So I think it's going to be, it's not, I don't think it's going to be the most played card in the set, but it's going to be the most valuable card in the set for sure. So let me know if you agree with my list. I hope that I'm going to be more accurate than I was in set 2. And obviously, I hope you're going to be enjoying the pre-release this weekend. And watch out for those cards. And don't trade those cards for nothing. Keep them or trade them for something valuable. With all that being said, thank you for following that video. And if you like that kind of video, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.